We are set to go for the post-Preakness edition of the It's Official podcast. He's Jeff Siegel. I'm Jeremy Plonk from First Bet and Express Bet. Middle jewel of the Triple Crown now in the rearview mirror as we hit mid-May, Jeff. And Seize the Gray, maybe not the one anyone expected. Co-sixth choice in an 8-horse field. And Wayne Lucas, did we expect him back in the winner's circle in a Triple Crown race? I don't know, but I know 25-year-old jockey Jaime Torres was not expected to be here. So here we are a couple days after the Preakness Stakes, and that's what we're going to talk about a lot today.
I didn't expect him to make the lead that early. If someone told me he was going to be cruising on the front end and with imagination kind of sitting on the outside, just kind of watching him, if I knew that trip was going to exist, I would have maybe picked him third, not I would have picked him to win. But at the top of the stretch, and it looked like Mystic Dan was going to go hook him. And then all of a sudden, he wasn't hooking him anymore. I said, oh, wait a second. Here's Wayne Lucas. I was at Pimlico when Oxbow won. And I really would love to see Wayne win. I mean, it's the 50th anniversary of me meeting Wayne for the first time. First year at Hollywood Park in 1974. When he was still a quarter horse trainer, and he started to dabble in thoroughbreds. And I remember, I think I told the story where as I went to my boss and said, this guy's going to be pretty good. Maybe I should do a feature story on him. And he said, my boss said, nah, nobody cares. I said, okay, I get it. Well, 50 years later, they care. I can tell you that.
They do care, yes.
And good to see Wayne win it. And with a horse that, kind of like Oxbow, where I didn't expect him to win, but boy, I love Wayne's taking the initiative here, saying this horse has got speed, which he never really showed in his two-turn races before, although he did show it in the Pate Mile, and said, put this horse on the lead, Wayne, going back to his quarter horse roots, let him roll and see what you got. And this was a good win for him, although I don't know, and I'd like to ask your opinion about this, is now how much of it was track condition created? I don't know. You know how it is when you get a loose in the lead speed horse in the mud, they take him a little farther than you didn't expect him to go. And I don't know whether this colt is a mud freak or not, although he did win the Pate Mile fast. So, I mean, it's a good win. And it kind of throws the division into a, kind of a mess, but that's okay. We like that too. Now we've got some important races to come up that will decide a championship here.
And that's where we will start our discussion with the Preakness postmortem as we look back at Preakness 149 on a soggy weekend at Pimlico. Soggy Saturday. Friday was beautiful weather for Black-Eyed Susan Day. And we'll take a look at some of the races that surrounded the Preakness a little bit later in the program. But let's go back to Dave Rodman's call on Saturday of the 149th Preakness. It was Seize the Gray skipping clear, as Jeff mentioned, and nobody coming to get him.
But it Seize the Gray in front, still in front by 3. Mystic Dan rolling up on the inside now. On the outside is Just Steel coming too. And in between Horses Imagination and Catching Freedom also looms large at the top of the stretch with a quarter to go at Pimlico. And leading the way is Seize the Gray. Seize the Gray trying to lead them all the way. Seize the Gray. And here's Mystic Dan tipping to the outside. Mystic Dan's coming with a run at the 3/16, but still in front of Seize the Gray. Seize the Gray and Jaime Torres in front. Mystic Dan, Brian Hernandez Jr. Catching Freedom on the outside with a late mid. It's Seize the Gray in front by 2, shifting out a little bit under left-handed pressure as they're close to home in the Preakness. Seize the Gray. Oh, Jaime Torres seized the day to win the 149th running of the Preakness.
From 2 years ago, just becoming a jockey to getting into the Preakness winner's circle, a really good ride. Like we saw with Brian Hernandez in the Kentucky Derby, the ride helping Mystic Dan that day. The ride here was excellent by Jaime Torres. I love the way he cut the corner. We'll take a look at the overhead shot a little bit in a few seconds, Jeff. But you had mentioned, was it the slop of this horse that moved him forward? I'm not so sure. I think this is a horse who's just getting good at the right time, similar to what we saw back in 1999 for Wayne Lucas with Charismatic, a horse who took a long time to kind of get his sea legs, and they tried to, shoehorn him into the Triple Crown by, after losing the Santa Anita, going to the Lexington, and all of a sudden the light bulb went on, and all of a sudden Charismatic became a top-notch 3-year-old, winning the Lexington brilliantly, and then coming back and winning 2 legs of the Triple Crown. For this horse, it was the Pat Day Mile that was his light bulb moment, if you will. You could not have seen that win in the Pat Day Mile coming from his previous starts. But after the Pat Day Mile and putting this Preakness together, he's given me some charismatic vibes. And, Seize the Gray is a horse who's, got a lot on the resume to this point, but only the last 2 races have been top tier. But now he fits kind of in the division, I think.
Well, not only that, but he's by Arrowgate. So if you're going to get good, you're probably going to get a good a little later on, as Arrowgate did. And at the time we lost Arrowgate as a stallion, I think he only had maybe 3 crops, and that was it. He had not gotten off to much of a start. But, sometimes these horses like Arrowgate, Curlin, a pretty good example of that, where you're not going to get a 2-year-old. So automatically in the midway through your 3-year-old season, if you haven't gotten anything great, they write you off. And now, whereas it didn't look like a great loss to the breeding industry when Arrowgate died suddenly, now it looks like he would be an heir apparent to a Curlin type of stallion, to get late developers. What's wrong with that? And Seize the Gray, being a son of Arrowgate and out of my Smart Strike, he's got every right to be better in the second half of the year as he has in the first half. And he's pretty good now in the first half. And the other thing about him is, while he won going on an easy front-running trip here, got loose on the lead and over and off track, he actually ran really well in the Pat Day Mile when he took heat and still came around. And you can see him, I thought right here, I don't know how you felt, but I thought right here that Mystic Dan was going to just gobble him up. And then all of a sudden it was the other way around. So while any horse can look good on the front end in a sloppy track win, he ran fast. It was a good race for him. Very, very good race.
Torres kind of stayed about a path off the rail earlier, into the far turn. And I don't know if he almost baited Mystic Dan to go down there, which would have been probably the wrong thing to do, because we've seen how good Mystic Dan has been coming up the inside. When Mystic Dan's been outside of horses, he didn't have that same kind of punch in some of his other races. And he was in the 2-path. You almost wonder if Brian Hernandez got bold and ducked down and tried to take that rail, again, inside the, outside the quarter pole, 5/16 of a mile to go. If we might have had a different finish, if Mystic Dan on the inside might have been, a horse who just accelerates when he's got the pressure of the pine to his inside like that. Maybe it's, a little fear or whatever it is that kind of gives him a little extra adrenaline rush down towards the inside. But he just doesn't seem to be quite the same horse out in 1-path, 2-path, 3-path outside of the lead horse. And so it was just the way the race was run circumstantially, I think probably contributed to the eventual finish. But both horses came with a really good race. And Mystic Dan, running back after the tough effort in the Kentucky Derby. We talk about the top 3 finishers here all coming back on 2 weeks, but it's a big difference coming back from the Pat Day Mile in a 1-turn mile race than coming back in the Kentucky Derby after the 1.25 miles. So, they all came back on the same 14 days, those top 3 finishers. But I'd say the horses coming out of the Derby came out of a tougher race. Although pace-wise, you could say certainly it was fast in the Pat Day Mile, and that was a taxing race because they did go quick fractions in there. Certainly, we're not going to say anything with Seize the Gray in terms of he was fresher than the other horses. He's run 4 times now since March 23rd.
Yeah. What is that? That's a throwback to something. I don't know. 4 races since late March.
I read somewhere that if he goes to the Belmont Stakes, it'll be 5 races in 11 weeks, something like that for him. So, look, he's in a barn that will take that chance. And Lucas always says, you got to be in it to win it, and you've got to run your horses. And he's run this horse in and out of form. It happens, right? I mean, the good horses used to get beat. If you look at the resumes, the good horses, like the great all-time horses, your Man of Wars didn't get beat very often, but But good horses get beat. The John Henrys, Ali Shebas, horses like that over the years lost races along the way and ran themselves back into form, in and out of form as they're feeling good and they're, they get over some of those bumps and bruises and aches and pains, and they run much better some starts than others. Seize the Gray could be one of those kind of horses, kind of a throwback in that regard, that he ran 5 times at 2. He's already run 6 times or 5 times now at 3. Maybe he'll thrive some starts and other starts just not quite have it. But his best is near the top of this division. I don't know if it's the very top of the division, Jeff, but it's pretty darn close.
It is. And I thought maybe that Ryan should have stayed on the rail as you did. But I also think that he didn't want to play it cute because he probably felt I can take that leader anytime I want.
Yeah.
I don't
right.
want to get caught in the inside and get hurted. That would be bad. If I angle off the rail, that's not going to happen. He might have run better if he'd sit on the rail, but there's no guarantee that he would have won. And he had dead aim. Like I say, at the top of the stretch, I thought he was home free, and then all of a sudden, he's losing ground and didn't really gallop out all that well at the end. So I think he was pretty much spent, which may or may not have been the quick turnaround. I don't know. But now we've gone through 2/3 of the Triple Crown, and it's still pretty wide open. I think Mystic Dan's resume, pretty impressive. There are others that have a chance to pass him, but I would say at this stage of the game, I think Wayne's going to run him back if he can. I know that there's an element of the My Racehorse where they would like to have those people participate, and I think Wayne's mentioned this where it's good for the ownership group. So I would think that he'll be there if he's healthy. He's got 3 weeks. That's a long layoff for this horse.
Yeah, they mentioned today that all things considered, if he's healthy, he's going. That's the plan for the Preakness 4 Seas the Gray. Mystic Dan, we'll see about him and talk about that potentially in the Belmont in just a bit. You talked about the post-Preakness, how this crop ranks. Here's what I've got for this Friday's Countdown to the Crown scouting report, where I'll review all the horses from the Preakness Stakes. I'm still calling Forever Young #1 amongst this crop. I thought he ran a winning race in the Kentucky Derby. And when you add what he did in Dubai and Saudi Arabia, his 3 starts this year, I don't think anybody else in this crop could have done what he did in those 3 starts, traveling away from his home in Japan on top of that. 3 major road trips, and he has 2 wins at a definitely tough, 2-nose defeat in the Kentucky Derby when he was probably best. Mystic Dan, he's got the resume, no question about it, with the Derby and the Preakness and what he did at Oaklawn. Sierra Leone, just a zot away from winning the Kentucky Derby, and what he did in the Bluegrass, and of course in the Risen Star, what a key prep that has been. He's right up there. Catching Freedom, 3rd in the Preakness. We didn't really mention him. He didn't run a threatening race to win the Preakness Stakes, but look, he put his 4th in the Kentucky Derby with his 3rd in the Preakness, and what he did also in the Louisiana Derby. He's had a heck of a season. We didn't get to see Muth in the Preakness because of the fever, but Muth will not be in the Belmont either, Bob Baffert said. So where do we see Muth? Probably the Haskell if he's healthy. I brought Seize the Gray in next, and it really gets fuzzy beyond Catching Freedom to me, because Muth, you're speculating, he won the Arkansas Derby, and that race came back key with what Mystic Dan did in his next 2 starts. So that's why Muth gets the respect in the 5-hole. Seize the Gray, I've got him up to #6 off this win in the Preakness. Fierceness off the Florida Derby and Holy Bull is 7 to me. Teo Passport ran a good race in the Kentucky Derby from Japan. He looks like a major threat in the division, back in the Breeders' Cup, perhaps. Resilience Encino undefeated, and a horse who I'd really like to see in the Triple Crown, but hasn't had a chance to run against some of the big boys yet, but 3 for 3 this year. That's the way I've got the top 10 right now. Jeff, how do you see it?
I think if you're talking about resume, and Forever Young's got the resume, then that's a very solid list, and I don't have many issues with it at all. Fierceness he should rate twice, the good Fierceness and the bad Fierceness. So
yeah, right.
He might deserve 2 slots up there. I want to mention 5 horses there that are not, well, actually 4 that are not on the list, and they don't deserve to be on the list based on resume, but I really think they have as much natural talent, and maybe more so than some of those horses there. Nisos, who was undefeated, clearly the best colt in California, but is on the sidelines right now. I do not know how long he'll be out. Bob's not telling anybody, Baffert. But if he had been healthy, he would have been there. But you know what it is, the best ability is availability. He's not been available. So but I think he's as good. I think he's as good as anything on that list. Then you have Maymoon, the colt that is 2 for 2. And again, same situation for Baffert. All of a sudden, a month before the Derby, he wasn't going to run in the Derby anyway, but he disappears, frosted colt. Then you have Muth, who I mentioned is now off the trail for at least until late summer after getting sick. Then you got a couple of really good, undefeated, but unproven colts. Knightsbridge is a really nice colt by Nyquist. But he has not had a workout since late April. So, again, another situation where maybe he's off the track. And then Mindframe, who is not going to run in the Belmont, but on numbers and both of his wins, runaway wins. He might be the best of the lot for all we know. These are colts that hopefully will get a chance to prove their worth in August of some time, and then in the fall. But like I say, if they're not racing, they're not on any list, because you can't do anything if you're not racing. So that group is the now group that you saw on Jeremy's list. I respect it. It looks solid to me. But there are still waiting in the wings type horses that could impact those rankings down the road.
Mindframe was the one I was like, off the 2 races, the maiden and the allowance. He was right there, and I was like, Mindframe, Encino. I was debating which one to put in there.
Right.
Ended up opting with Encino off the win in the Lexington. But again, Mindframe, if he was in the Lexington, he probably would have won that too. The way he looks on talent, I agree with you. He could be right up there with any of them. So as we switch gears now from the Preakness, we look ahead in the Triple Crown season to the Belmont Stakes, and we wonder just how the Belmont will be shaping up for the run at Saratoga this year at 1.25 miles. Here are the unofficial possibles, probables towards the June 8th final leg of the Triple Crown. You've got the Derby winner, Mystic Dan. He's already on the grounds. He vanned from Pimlico in recent hours and days to Saratoga, so he's already bedded down in upstate New York. He could run in the Belmont Stakes. They could opt to run the filly, Kenny McPeek trained filly, Torpedo Anna. She would have to be supplemented in there. One of the 2 McPeek horses seems pretty likely for the Belmont Stakes, but certainly not both. Seize the Gray expected back, the Preakness winner. And then you've got the horses from the Derby, Sierra Leone, Fierceness, Honor Marie, Door Knock, and then the new kind of horses towards the Triple Crown Series, Antiquarian, winner of the Peter Pan, battened down by Tappet out of Close Hatches, the Belmont trained our maiden winner at Churchill Downs. Of course, Tappet's in the Belmont Stakes. You got to respect them just on pedigree alone. Tuscan Gold, a disappointing 4th in the Preakness for me. I thought he'd run better than that. He's still possible for Chad Brown moving forward. Catching Freedom off the Preakness and Derby, top 4 finishes. And then the Wine Steward, 2nd in the Peter Pan, I believe is the favorite in the Peter Pan that day. He's also possible in there for trainer Mike Maker. So, Jeff, as we look ahead to the Belmont Stakes, what do you make of the possibles?
Yeah, I'm looking at Torpedo Anna, and I know it's tempting to go here, but Todd Pletcher once said something that stuck with me. He said, it's okay to run a filly in the Belmont Stakes, but you better win it, because if you don't, and Rags to Riches won it, but she only ran one more time in her career after that, didn't win that race, and it takes so much out of it. Now, granted, those Belmonts, or her Belmont was 1.5 miles. It may not be as taxing going 1.25 miles. But then the other one that Kenny had, Swiss Skydiver, she won it. She ran 5 more times after her win in the Preakness, not the Belmont, but the Preakness. I'm talking about a Triple Crown race now with a filly.
Yeah,
she ran 5 times, only ran 1 time and was off the board 3, and then that was the end of her. So taking a filly like this at this time of the year, whether it's the Preakness or the Belmont, again, you better win it, because there is no guarantee you're going to have the same horse after that race. And I, for one, would not do it. I really, if there'd been a Triple Crown involved here and you become a filly who denies a Triple Crown, that's part of the resume, and that's impressive. But there's so many races that filly, Torpedo Anna, could win. I don't think she needs to do that. It's too risky, but it's his horse and he'll do what he wants.
Here she is winning the Kentucky Oaks a couple weeks ago at Churchill.
Just FYI is making her run, and the 3 of them will come to the top of the stretch. 3/4, 111.75, and they're into the stretch. And Torpedo Anna tries to take him all the way. Just FYI has moved up to the outside. Ways and Means has started to get way. Regulatory Risk has run a big one, and is down the center of the track. Torpedo Anna still going strong at the 16th pole. Oh, she's got plenty left. And Brian Hernandez and Torpedo Anna dominate the 150th Kentucky Oaks.
She will certainly contribute to the storylines if she shows up for the Belmont Stakes. Favoritism in the Belmont, if you had to say right now, probably comes down to Sierra Leone and Fierceness, and Sierra Leone's good 2nd in the Kentucky Derby, and Chad Brown in New York with a fresh horse. I would think that he is going to be formidable on the tote board as well as the racetrack, but I would think Sierra Leone would be the Belmont Stakes favorite. given this particular list. Jeff, what do we do with Fierceness off that 15th place finish in the Kentucky Derby? I've seen Todd Pletcher have some horses just tank in the Kentucky Derby, and there were questions about their health. I think Dunkirk back in the day, and Dunkirk came back and ran a dynamite second in the Belmont Stakes when there was even questions about his health coming out of the race with Dunkirk. We looked at Fierceness and just how flat and awful he was on Kentucky Derby Day. Do we look for him to bounce back? It seems like the direction is we're going Fierceness. All the talk about Mind Frame going to the Belmont has gone away. So I always say necessity is the mother of invention when it comes to running horses in races here. If they thought Fierceness wasn't up to the task, they'd be talking Mind Frame up. Now Mind Frame's not being talked about, and it's all systems go with Fierceness. What do we make of Fierceness towards the Belmont?
Well, I think your analysis there is correct. I think they must think that Fierceness is back on the beam. And let's not forget the race he ran at Saratoga last year as a 2-year-old when he broke his maiden first out by a pole, really. So, But again, you never know what you're going to get with Fierceness. Right. In looking at that race, again, going 1.25 miles, not 1.5 miles, and the pace situation here, if Seize the Gray is in the race, I don't think Wayne will be changing the strategy. I think he'll let him roll out of there, and Fierceness can sit second if he can do that, which he's done that before. But other than that, it doesn't look like there's going to be a lot of zip in that race, and so it could be a parade, which is another reason why Wayne probably run Seize the Gray. He figures, hey, I'll be in front again, and who knows what the weather is going to be like. It could be raining that day as well. So, but I tell you what, if Torpedo Anna runs, she'll get a lot of the storyline. Right. So Phillies and the Colts. You got Wayne in there. You got Pletcher's horse. I mean, it would be, even though there's no Triple Crown available, man, that's going to be one heck of an interesting race.
And then you add the Saratoga element to it, right? Yeah. The uniqueness of the Triple Crown moving to the Spa. The Saratoga Belmont Stakes Festival will be June 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th, 4 days of racing. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and a Sunday card before they ship back downstate to Aqueduct for a few more weeks, month or so, until the July opening of the Saratoga proper meet. So a lot of shifting and jiving. In fact, there's going to be, I believe, after Memorial Day coming up this Monday, there's going to be a break in the NYRA schedule until that Belmont Festival, because they've got to move all the ops from, from Aqueduct up to, so it's kind of like changing meets there. So there's going to be a little bit of a dark time in New York racing for a week or so there till they shift things up to Saratoga. So a lot to look forward to. We'll keep you apprised of it right here on It's Official. And like Jeff mentioned, when we talked about that debut win by Fierceness, you saw it first here on It's Official. He was one of our stars of tomorrow after the career debut win at Saratoga last year. So that's why you watch the program. Never know what news we'll make here on the show. Let's go to our third topic this week on It's Official. And we're going to talk about the stakes winner of the week. Of course, all the accolades went to Seize the Gray and all the attention and the national TV coverage. But the stakes winner of the week was coming on a little bit earlier in the weekend. Her name was She Feels Pretty. And what an impressive late performance by this 3-year-old filly in the Hilltop Stakes.
In the meantime, She Feels Pretty is out in the clear. Around the turn, is now over near the inside, and now in between horses as they reach the top of the stretch, and she's got a clear seam to run through. She Feels Pretty at the 3/16 pole. She Feels Pretty. She Feels Pretty is asked to kick for the final furlong, and big kick she gives. She Feels Pretty in front from Just Better, opening up 4. Waves of Mischief into third. She Feels Pretty. She's pretty good in the Hilltop Stakes under John Velasquez.
That's the way you want to see one get down and level off. Of course, the turf was a little firmer, but still not very firm on Friday. It had some give to it, but she got over it tremendously. It was her first race back. Jeff, she was a really good 2-year-old filly on the grass last year. She looks like she's something. And in that 3-year-old filly division, we see it year over year. You could just run off that division. When you're the tops of that kind of double restricted division, just 3-year-olds, just fillies, she could dominate and run through that division.
Let's not forget, she won her first, I think it was 2 starts last year, and then was favored in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf, and got beat 3/4 of a length from a bad box, bad post, and then was put away. And sometimes these fillies, they win are great, they develop, they mature, and sometimes they come back and they're no better than what they were. So you never know what you're going to get. And I know that the 3-year-old filly turf division is not exactly the most prestigious in thoroughbred racing, but this filly came back better than she left. She won for fun, last 8th and sub 12, not really being asked at all. And I think she's got a chance to roll right through her condition. And she may not be a household name now, and maybe she never will. But man, I mean, for those of us who appreciate top class fillies, she's already there in my book and might even get better. And she just blew me away. I mean, it was just so impressive. She feels pretty trained by Cherie DeVaux. And I do think that, I mean, she had a pretty good week. We'll talk about her other goal in a second. But no, I think she goes onward and upward here. And, you know, Chad Brown's got a lot of these in his barn. He better have some really good ones to take on. She feels pretty.
Yeah, she was outstanding first time back. Now, she was our stakes performer of the week, and we were going to give honorable mention to another one. We give special consideration to Pyrenees, also trained by Cherie DeVaux in the Pimlico Special. This is a race where Kings Barnes was bet down to heavy favoritism, took the lead in mid-stretch, and looked like he was going on with it until Pyrenees said, not so fast.
They race toward the top of the stretch with a quarter to go at Pimlico. It's Harlow Cap, a tenacious customer down to the inside. Kings Barn on the outside is asked the question. Kings Barnes on the outside, down to the inside, Harlow Cap. They're head-to-head for the lead. Pyrenees is trying to close the gap toward the center of the track, but it's Kings Barnes who's digging down. Harlow Cap down to the inside, still there, and Pyrenees on the outside. Pyrenees coming at Kings Barnes. Kings Barnes, here's Pyrenees. Pyrenees surging at Kings Barn. A thriller in the Pimlico Special, and Pyrenees and Brian Hernandez Jr. get up to win from Kings Barnes in second and Harlow Cap.
That was an impressive performance for a horse stepping up into the stakes ranks, Jeff. I think we've got one in the handicap division on the East Coast here that we can kind of keep an eye on. Pyrenees, this was very impressive to me.
Well, he somehow managed to get himself beat in his first 4 races, maiden races. I don't know how that happened. But after 4 defeats in maiden races, 2 races back, he kind of hit rock bottom when the third maiden race that he lost, 11th of 12. I mean, I was thinking, oh, well, it's okay. He can run him from maiden 40 or something. You know? Right. But since that, after getting defeated in his first 4, and now he's reeled off 4 in a row, a maiden win, 2 allowance races, and now the Pimlico Special. You saw him at Keeneland. Did you have any inclination that he could do this good so quickly?
No, you know, and against Kings Barnes, who, you know, when he took the lead over Harlow Cap was probably in there to set it up for Red Route 1. We talked about that on our handicapping show. He went to the front. He looked like he always had Harlow Cap, and when he just kind of put him away, Kings Barnes is a horse who, off his Keeneland win, everybody was thinking this is going to be one of the major players in the handicap division. Todd took a good step forward here by putting him in the Pimlico Special, but not going straight to something like the Stephen Foster or something off of that win at Keeneland. But then for Pyrenees to go by that horse, because I think a lot of people will put, you know, Kings Barnes maybe top 10 in the handicap division going into that race.
I did, you know.
And he went by him easily. And, you know, like Dave Rodman's like, oh, we got a thriller in the Pimlico Special. Well, he wins by a length and a half. I mean, he just like that acceleration at the end was fantastic. And I think we've got ourselves a really good one here in Pyrenees. I can't wait to see what happens with him. You know, you think something like the Stephen Foster would make a lot of sense. You know, and I at my 3/16, he was just kind of getting warmed up there. So when you talk about the handicap classic division races that really get good later in the year at some longer trips, this is a horse we're going to have to definitely be talking about. And Cherie DeVaux, I mean, you mentioned it. She had herself one heck of a weekend. Here she is in the winner's circle in the red jacket with Pyrenees after her 3rd stakes win on the Friday Black-Eyed Susan Day card. Of course, we saw her win the Hilltop. She won the DuPont Distaff as well. And then the Pimlico Special. They have a bonus for trainers who bring horses in on Preakness weekend and have the best weekend in their point system. Cherie DeVaux not only won these 3 stakes races, she got an extra $50,000 in cash for the trainers bonus. So huge weekend there for the former assistant to Chuck Simon and also Chad Brown. She's been on her own a few years now and really moving on up. She's had a great run. I picked up on it midway through the Keeneland meet, Jeff. Through Keeneland on, she's like 50% in the exacta almost since the start of the Keeneland meet. We're talking like a month and a half, 6-7 week run where every other horse she puts out there on the tracks running 1-2. Her barn is going really well right now.
Yeah, I never met her. I know David, her and Gordo, her husband, and he's bought horses for me at auction. So, but if I ever have a horse in the East, she's on top of my list. I can tell you that, in terms of having a trainer, because she does a very, very good job, and she's developed this colt, who, by the way, is a son of Into Mischief, so he's got a right to be any kind, really. And in that race, we saw, I know they went slow the first part, but to outkick Kings Barnes, who had just a dream trip, and come the last 3/16 in less than 18 seconds, shows me there was the acceleration there that I think will bode well for him as he develops and gets bigger, better, and stronger at age 4. I think he could be, by the time midsummer and farther down the road, he could be one of the ones. So good race there. It was just a grade 3, but I think these colts that ran 1-2 are better than that, and it'll be interesting to see how far up the ladder they can both climb.
Track conditions were different, but distances were the same. When you talk about the Pimlico Special and the Preakness, you mentioned sub 18 for the final 3/16. Preakness was 19.29 for the final 5/16 of a mile. So, I mean, or 3/16 of a mile. So quite a turn of foot there at the end of a, endurance type race at a mile and 3/16 in American dirt racing these days. So really looking forward to that one. Parodies, put that one on your horses to watch, stars to watch list, as well as She Feels Pretty in the 3-year-old filly division. So 3-year-old fillies on the turf, and in the classic division, Cherie DeVoe's got a couple hot hands to play. Who could be the next star that we see pop up? Well, we'll go to our Stars of Tomorrow segment as that returns to the program this week. We're going to go to Belmont at the Big A, and this was a race that happened on May 16th, so I believe that would have been, Friday of last week, and Donegal Momentum, the winner in here for an impressive debut winner here. Let's go back and take a look at the win for Donegal Momentum.
Still a nose in front. It's Light the Way who hugs the rail. Romero Mirage trying to pick up another one, but Donegal Momentum now straightens up and bursts to the lead. Donegal Momentum at 7-5. Treaty Obligation is trying to get within range, but the leader is just gliding away now inside that final furlong. Donegal Momentum striding away easily is up by 5. Geared down. Donegal Momentum by Uncle Mo will win this one impressively. Treaty Obligation second, Light the Way, and Arteta will hold on for fourth, then 1 minute 10.30 seconds.
Winner there for Tom Morley. I couldn't get the name out. All I could think of was Maggie Wolfendale, of course, his famous wife, who's
Well, doesn't she train the horse too? I mean, she probably trains him too.
Right. Yeah, so I should have just given Maggie credit for being the trainer in there. So exactly. Apologies, Tom, but credit to the missus for sure. Maggie Wolfendale and Tom Morley there. They've got themselves a good one in Donegal Momentum, Jeff, that you picked out this week.
Really good. Again, I'm who doesn't like Uncle Mo as a stallion? The margin was 8 1/4 lengths. It was all done in the final furlong pretty much, and eased up, never asked at all. Really good athlete, good mover colt. He's out of a mare who raced out here in California, was a grass filly. Her name was Moon Dash by Malibu Moon. Second dam was another California runner on grass, a mare named In the Slips by More Than Ready. That's where the grass comes from. It's not but the third dam was by Cozine. That's grass. Fourth dam by Ledge. That's really grass. So his and Uncle Mo's run on anything. So there are options here for this colt. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily go to the grass yet. He obviously can handle dirt, and there's a lot of money for dirt horses, especially a colt like this who's bred to run farther than this. But I think, again, another colt that may be come Saratoga midsummer, he could advance quick enough to be among that list. He looks like there could be any kind of prospect for him. And again, last eighth, he went the last quarter in less than 23 and wasn't even trying. I mean, less than 24, I should say. But still, that was impressive. And I'm going to put him on the list. By the way, he went off at 7-5. So it wasn't exactly a surprise that he won, but I don't know if they expected him to do that. But man, be excited about Donegal Momentum there, upward and onward for him.
I love those pedigrees when you got that brilliance on top, like the Miler and Uncle Mo, and then that turfy dam side pedigree. That's my kind of horse right there. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Donegal Momentum can do down the line. Let's take a look at our topics this week on It's Official. Our Preakness postmortem, we talked about Seize the Day kind of awakening in the Pat Day Mile and carrying that over. Seize the Gray winning the Preakness Stakes. We talked about how the Belmont Stakes is shaping up and the list of probable contenders and possible contenders in there. Will we see the filly Torpedo Anna? Will we get the Derby and Preakness winners back up in a head-to-head matchup? And who's awaiting? Horses like Sierra Leone. Our stakes winner of the week was She Feels Pretty Pretty, who had a tremendous turn of foot finishing up on the turf in the Hilltop Stakes at Pimlico on Friday. We gave special consideration to the Pimlico Special winner, Pyrenees, who ran by Kings Barnes to win the Pimlico Special over 1 mile and 3/16 and looks like a top player in the handicap division. And our star tomorrow, the Tom Morley trained Donegal Momentum. These 5 topics are now official because Jeff Siegel and I said so. That's how we play the game. Sometimes on It's Official, you get a little bonus coverage, right? We've got our 5 topics finished up. We've got a 6th topic this week, and we want to salute someone who I know is watching. John White, our buddy John White from Santa Anita Park, going back to the days on HRTV. It was announced today from Santa Anita that he is retiring at the end of the Santa Anita meet coming up in about 3-4 weeks' time. We want to wish John happy retirement. Good friend of both of ours, and certainly a cohort we've worked together with, Jeff. Best wishes to John into retirement. He's a morning winemaker at Santa Anita. He, along with Johnny DeSantis, probably go back to day one with Express Bet and the predecessor to First Bet. They are the originals, the OGs, if you will. Mm-hmm. And you were back there in the very beginning, I believe, as well with the entire group. So with Johnny out of the game here in the past couple of years, John White has been kind of the senior member of our team in terms of longevity with the Express Bet family. And certainly we're going to miss him when he retires, but wish him all the best. And I know you've had a lot of great dealings with John over the years.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm jealous because he's retiring. I'm older than him, and I'm still working. Something's not right here. But I talked to him. I said, congratulations, and stepping away. And like he loves to travel, loves sports, and he'll be moving around. And again, all of best wishes to John. And I think he's the kind of guy who I know will enjoy his retirement. He's going to be doing things.
Tracy's got to deal with him more often, though, now in retirement. Yeah. So I don't know who wins and all that. We'll find out as John enjoys retirement. Gallop off into the sunset, friend. Enjoy it. Keep in touch with all of us, of course, in racing. And we look forward to John's contributions to the Belmont Stakes wager guide before he wraps up the end of the meet at Santa Anita as well, and his blogs at Express Bet and First Bet over the next few weeks as well. You can check them out there. But a salute to a good guy, and we know he's watching here today. So, John, tip of the cap to you, pal, and best wishes moving forward. That'll wrap up this edition of the It's Official podcast presented by First Bet and Express Bet. Jeff and I will be back on Friday with the First Call podcast when we handicap weekend stakes races. Huge Memorial Day weekend in Jeff's backyard at Santa Anita. A bunch of Cowbred stakes on Saturday. You've got the Gold Cup coming up on Memorial Day Monday. Stakes Saturday, Sunday, Monday. 4 days of racing this week, Friday through Monday. Jeff will have it all covered for you. But when we come back on Friday, we'll handicap some of those big stakes races from Gulfstream and Santa Anita as well this coming weekend. Have a great week, everybody. We'll talk to you Friday.